Hello everyone, my name is Kruti Savani and I am a third year medical student from Srimati Kashibai Navle Medical College and General Hospital, Pune. Now let's talk about lesions about the cerebellum. So it will correspond obviously to the physiology and anatomy if there are some lesions. So we'll talking here itself. I told you that flocculonodular lobe helps in eye movements in corresponds to head movements. So if we lesion flocculonodular lobe, then this action will not be taking place and hence there will be nystagmus. Nystagmus per se it is involuntary oscillatory motion of your eyeballs. It can be in vertical direction and it can be in horizontal direction. So the cerebellum here it will disrupt the vertical movements. Okay, so because the horizontal conjugate gaze will be controlled by the medial longitudinal fasciculus, which is out of a discussion of this topic. Okay, so this nystagmus can be manifested when there is flocculonodular lobe lesion. Okay, then vermis. Talking about vermis, if vermis is lesion, then it will cause gait ataxia and truncal ataxia. Now, what is ataxia? Ataxia is imbalance, basically imbalance. But the question is what type of imbalance, whether it is standing imbalance, sitting imbalance. So this will correspond to that axial skeletal imbalance and proximal musculature. So if your proximal limb muscles are hampered, then you will get gait ataxia. And the very special example is about the thigh muscles, which is a part of your proximal limb. So if that is not getting proper out input from the vermis, then you have gait ataxia, saying thereby that whenever a person tries to stand or walk, he will sway depending upon the type of the lesion. So hence it is called gait ataxia. And what is truncal ataxia? It is manifested when there is some problem with the axial skeleton. So the person will sway while sitting on a chair. So it is very typical when patient comes to your clinic. So he or she will sit on a chair and he or she won't be able to sit because they will sway from one side to another side depending upon which side of vermis is lesion. So yeah, that is gait ataxia and truncal ataxia. But mind that it is very important to differentiate all these ataxia. One more ataxia coming here is limb ataxia. Now, what is limb ataxia? As I told you, intermediate hemisphere will be corresponding to distal limb movements. So, if intermediate hemisphere is lesion, the distal limbs will won't be having proper fine tuning, and hence the patient will be having limb ataxia. Now, this limb ataxia is almost it is limb ataxia means then this patient will have dysmetria. Now, what is dysmetria? That is called as pass pointing. Exactly what I told you at the start of our discussion, that if I ask my brain to go and pick up a pencil, so the my brain should ask my hand to go and pick up that pencil only and not that other eraser which is standing thereby. So whenever this part of the cerebellum is lesion, the patient won't be able to pick that pencil up, and this is tested by a very important and very well-known test, Solas finger nose test. So that is by this way. So you ask the patient to stand, outstretch their arms, and you ask the patient to bring these fingers close to the nose. Okay, so the patient with this kind of lesion won't be able to uh, take this tip of the finger to the nose, and they will be pass pointing somewhere else. It may be to eyes, it may be to lips, or it may be anywhere but not to the nose. So that is called as limb ataxia. Okay, and they will also have dyssynergy, that is dyssynergy in speech, that is they have scanning dysarthria, meaning thereby the patient will break down their speech into monosyllables. So this will this will cause a very weird kind of speech, and there will be no melody to the speech left. So this is also one of the manifestation. And the last lesion we're talking about is lateral hemisphere lesion. So from a discussion, try remembering what did the lateral hemisphere control. So lateral hemisphere controlled motor planning and fine movements. Okay, so if this part of our cerebellum is injured, patient will get intention tremors and dysdiadochokinesia. What is intention tremor? So whenever patient will go and try to pick up this pencil, let's say, then this patient will won't be having the fine movement. So this so that the errors of this movement won't be corrected by the cerebellum, and hence this there will be excitation right here. So that's why there will be intention tremor like this. Let's go and review that. I told you all the inputs to the cerebellum is excitatory, okay, and it will detect the errors in the movement. So if the lateral part of the hemisphere is damaged or lesion, then the patient will have intention tremor because the cerebellum is not sending any inhibitory output from it, so that this excessive movement, excitatory excessive movement won't be stopped, and hence the patient will have intention tremor. But it is very important to differentiate from the resting tremors, which is caused in Parkinson's disease. So that tremor is present when the patient is not having any voluntary movement per se. So hence the name resting tumor. And this is intention tumor when the patient is actually going to perform some voluntary movement, but the error of that movement is not being corrected by the cerebellum, and hence the patient has intention tremor. What is dysdiadochokinesia? This is my most favorite word from the physiology, because what does this mean is that the patient won't be able to perform alternate rapid movements, and that is alternate supination pronation. So this was a test performed in physiology practical, and it is the very important and useful test to differentiate such kind of lesions. Okay. Now, you must be knowing about the Romberg sign. At times, it is very confusing to differentiate between sensory ataxia and motor ataxia. Now, what is sensory ataxia and motor ataxia? So, let's try to understand Romberg sign. Okay, so you ask the patient to stand straight, okay, with their eyes open. Okay, so with eyes open, the patient will get visual inputs, okay, to the cerebrum through our sensory vision. Okay, so this will help the patient to stand. Okay, but when you ask the patient to close their eyes, they sway because they are not having any visual input through their eyes. Okay, so now how will you differentiate it from the sensory and motor ataxia? So sensory ataxia is present when there is lesion of dorsal column medial lemniscal pathway, because one of the most important sensory modality carried by this tract is conscious proprioception. That is, what is proprioception? It is position of your body in space. So that is also conscious. So if this pathway is lesion, then there will be no conscious proprioception modality taken by this pathway, and hence the patient sways. But if you ask your patient to keep their eyes open, then they'll have the visual inputs to the cerebellum, and hence that will be compensated by the visual inputs. And you ask the patient to close your eyes, so what happens that the pathway is already lesioned, plus you ask the patient to close the eyes, so there will be no input to the cerebellum, and hence there will be swaying, then it will be called as sensory ataxia. Now, how will you differentiate from motor ataxia? Now, in this case, the patient can't stand straight even with their eyes open, because the problem lies here at the level of cerebellum. Okay, so in this sensory ataxia case, although there was no conscious proprioception, but eyes opening of the eyes was giving some visual input to the cerebellum. Okay, but in this case, the cerebrum itself is, dead, or you can say lesion. So even opening of eye is not helping patient. So this will be called as motor ataxia. That is, cerebrum's main function is to provide balance to the body by integrating motor information from the cerebral cortex, which we saw through the upper motor neurons and then the corticospinal tract. Hence, if there is problem with cerebellum, then the patient will have motor ataxia. The last topic for discussion is very important, and it is also a well-known topic for discussion, that if you see alcohol abuser, then they kind to sway from here and there. Their gait is very typical drunken man's gait, and also how is it actually affecting our cerebellum, how alcohol actually affects our cerebellum. Let's see that. So vermis, so I told you it is the central most portion of the cerebellum. Let's go and revise what is vermis. See, this is the central most part of the cerebellum, that is vermis. So now vermis is of you know divided into two parts, anterior vermis and posterior vermis. Okay, so let's go and see here. See this. So this is cerebellum. So the anterior part, this is anterior vermis and this is posterior vermis. Now why it is important to divide vermis into two parts? Because anterior vermis lesion, what happens in that, that is affected by alcohol abuse. So this will present as gait ataxia. Now what did I say tell you about gait ataxia? Let's go and revise here. When there is problem with proximal limb, you will be having gait ataxia. That is, let's take an the most important example is about the thigh muscles. So the patient will be able to walk, but they won't be able to walk properly in straight line or whatever they however however direction they wanted to walk. So the patient will try to sway, patient will be swaying while walking. So this will be called as gait ataxia. I told you it is important to differentiate from truncal ataxia, in which the patient won't be able to sit properly. They will try to they will be swaying while they are sitting. So that will be truncal ataxia. And limb ataxia, I told you, that is pass pointing. That is, the patient won't be able to perform fine movements with their the distal limbs, whether it may be your distal leg or distal hand. Okay, so alcohol abuse, so alcohol will have very severe effect on anterior vermis, and it will be presenting as gait ataxia. Now posterior vermis, that is affected mainly by the pressure effects from tumors. What kind of tumor? This is medulloblastoma or ependymoma. So what will happen, and what are these tumors? These tumors are of the fourth ventricle. So I told you in the relations of cerebellum that fourth ventricle is present anterior to the cerebellum. Okay, so tumors of fourth ventricle, that is medulloblastoma, if with frequent and gradual growing of this tumor, it will have pressure effect on the posterior cerebellum, and hence the posterior cerebellum won't be able to perform its function, and hence the patient will present as truncal ataxia. So I hope you all have understood the importance of the cerebellum in clinical neurology. So hence it is very important to learn anatomy and physiology of the cerebellum. I have tried my best to make you all understand. Thank you so much for cooperating and peaceful hearing.